Alright, so today's video is going to be all about selling coloring books on Amazon KDP, since this seems to be all the rage at the moment. Now, I am someone who actively sells coloring books on Amazon KDP. I've been doing the coloring book thing since 2018. I've uploaded 31 different coloring books, and last month we sold over 3,000 units, and this month so far today, just so you can see the update, is 44 units at the start of May. Again, last month we had 3,392. And I think it's always important to pair this with advertising spend and sales. So for the majority of the orders that are coming into my account are for the coloring books, probably around 370, and we spent over probably $750 on coloring books last month. Okay, so that's the reality when it comes to advertising spend as well. It's got to be there. It's got to be utilized in a very effective and thoughtful way. This number is much higher than what I typically spend each month by probably $200 to $300, maybe $400. And the reason for that is because each of my books go through a kind of launch period where I spend more money per book during that launch. So we'll talk about that as we go through this video, but let's go through this. So the way that I'm going to do this, we're going to go through the approach that people are probably taking that is costing them time and money and making them not see results. Then we'll go through what my approach has been over the last year or so to actually see some really good success with coloring books on Amazon KDP. So before we get into this, just want to divert your attention to my new website, which is called chrisraydog.com. So at the time of recording this, you might be able to enter onto the waitlist. You might be able to get in on the service itself, but go ahead. This is something special that I'm working on. Been working on this for a long time. Go ahead and check out the benefits to the FAQ, join the waitlist, or join the service itself. I'm not going to say too much about this here because you can just go and check it out. It's going to be in the description and in the pinned comment. But this is something, if you're super serious about taking your KDP results to the next level, this is where you want to be. So with that in mind, let's go through this and talk about coloring books and what you might be doing currently. So my pet peeve in life, and I've been down this road of making these hot videos myself. I got nothing really against them, like people are just doing their things, creating the content, but it only really paints around 10% of the entire picture. Now, when it comes to doing a niche research and finding these hot niches, and this is why I find this frustrating, is that these hot niches that you see on YouTube, you can literally head over to Amazon and in about 10 to 15 seconds, you can find all these niches yourself. If you spend like an hour a day doing niche research or just 20 minutes a day doing niche research, you can find all these niches before the YouTubers start making videos about them. And honestly, doing the niche research, finding these niches, which I'll show you as we go through, is the easiest part of your publishing business. And if you cannot do this bit yourself, if you're being spoon-fed these hot niches, then how do you expect to actually make the harder parts of the publishing business work when you can't even do this bit by yourself? Okay, so we'll talk about the niche research in a second. So what tends to happen from here is that people will find a niche, whether it's a tool or whether it's a YouTube video, they go ahead and just pump the book out as fast as they can using AI or either hiring an illustrator or using stock images. And I want to talk about these three sections here first, because here's the thing. I've got nothing at all really against AI. I've got nothing against hiring illustrators, and I've got nothing against stock image websites or asset packs. Now, let's go ahead and go over to Amazon, just give you an example of the issues that I have when it comes to each of these different ways of creating content. So here's the thing, and I'm just going to use these kind of fairy books. And I know that some of these AI books are selling well. I know that people can produce AI books that look really good. But here's the problem that I have with AI. Let's just go ahead and check out the newest arrivals in this section here. Now, the reason that, in my opinion, none of these books are really going to sell or have any chance whatsoever of selling is because we got to this point where the content creation has become so easy that a lot of these books, when they come out, what happens if we have this kind of book echo chamber where one person is successful with something, or there's a few people successful with something, and then people just go ahead and pump out tons of very similar content onto Amazon. So if you scroll through this, and this is the thing, when people do this, when people see an opportunity and they want to jump on it, you end up getting things like this here. So one thing that people never take into consideration is the uniqueness of their book and also the customer experience. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think some of these fellas on this cover here look very strange. We have someone that has a foot growing out of their head, for example. We have this dude at the bottom here that's all mangled up like a pretzel. And you just think to yourself, like, there's no one in their right mind would actually buy this. Now, if this book gets visibility, someone will probably buy it at some point. If the book gets advertising sales, people will obviously be able to receive the book and check it out. Now, what will happen, and again, it's so crazy to think people don't think about this, but when the customer goes through this and they start seeing that it's all kind of, that these are all the same, like these images, they look so similar. There's no variety. All these AI images, they look like the people are just staring directly into your soul. It's very strange. And there's no variety in this, and it doesn't look particularly fun to color in. So in terms of longevity in the marketplace, this is something people really don't think about, is the variety and the quality of their books. And I don't know how people manage to do this, but there's this kind of underlying similar feel to all of these books. Like, even though they're different, obviously, they all kind of just look the same. There's nothing unique about these. Now, to give you an example of something here, if we come back to the bestsellers list here, if I find the one that I wanted to use as an example, which was this one here. Now, I don't know if this is created by AI or whatever. It doesn't really matter that much. But the book cover is something, in my opinion, that I think is gorgeous, like absolutely fantastic. And the images inside this one as well, they look much, much, much better. So the chance of this book selling and getting higher reviews is much higher than the ones that we just looked at. That should go without saying, but people really don't think about it. And that's the problem that I have with producing books with AI. Maybe someone can comment below, like, do you think this is made with AI? I don't think this is. Let me know what you think, because obviously AI is getting better and better and better, which is cool. But I'm not sure about this one here. Let me know what you think below. So here's the thing. Here's something that is even more important when it comes to coloring books, is hiring an illustrator. Like, I don't care if people use AI. I don't care if people use asset packs, whatever it is. You're creating content the way that you want to, where it makes sense, right? So in this section over here, we're talking about creating content with a proportionate return. Now, this is something, and this is so important, people never think about this, is that they hire illustrators for an extremely large cost to make content in niches that don't have enough traffic going to them to warrant the amount that they spend. Okay, so in some cases, if the niches aren't that good, you'd want to possibly look at creating them with like a stock image or asset pack, should I say, or using AI. So in some cases, it doesn't make sense to hire an illustrator for a lot of money. Now, this is the thing, like, people think when they hire an illustrator that it means that the quality of the book is going to be much higher. The reality is, if you're coming into niches that don't have traffic going to them, you are very unlikely to bring a ton of new audience to that niche. So it doesn't warrant spending a ton of money on hiring an illustrator. So I've got a few videos on determining whether there is buyer traffic going to niches or not. Typically, I just use a BSR extension to see roughly where the BSRs are at on the first page. But if you're coming through something like a sports coloring book, and you could see that all the BSRs were around 300 to 500,000 and above, you'd look at that and you'd have to say to yourself, is it worth me investing into an illustrator to produce these type of books when the niche potential is proven to be not that high? So you'd want to save, if you're going to use an illustrator, you want to save it for the niches that do have a ton of traffic going to them, right? So here's the other thing that people do, is using these kind of stock images or asset websites, so like Creative Fabric, or using images from Canva. Given recent events, I would not touch either of these places in terms of creating coloring books. And there's been a lot of people, well, enough people, should I say, to steer you away from using those kind of marketplace websites like Creative Fabric. Again, I've got nothing against it. It's just when it comes to using the images that have been uploaded onto these websites, you don't know if the original owner has actually given people permission to use it. So what has happened is that the original owner will come and they will find that these images are being used without their permission, complain, and then the books will get taken down, books blocked, accounts terminated. It's just not worth the risk. So in terms of asset packs, I only really ever recommend one, and that's in the description below, which is from my friend Hugh Hughes. He has these all hand-drawn illustrations. It's a service. You can do like a one-day, $1 trial if you use my link below, but it's going to be like $27 a month after that or something. But you get like a stupendous amount of assets that you can use for any of your books, and you can go into it with the confidence knowing that you are actually safe to use these because they're coming from a reliable source and not some marketplace where you're unsure. So if you want to check that out, that's in the description below. But regardless of how you create your book, what people will do then is just thoughtlessly run advertising campaigns. This is something I feel extremely passionate about. I'm going to show you in my account in a second the way that I do things. But what happens is people just create the content, whatever they do, they go ahead, that they lose money, stop their advertising campaigns, quit, start punching walls, and then start coming over to forums and YouTube comments and complaining that the KDP, the coloring book thing, has all been completely and utterly saturated. So here's the thing. Let's go back up here and start looking at what I think is a much, much sounder approach. Now, this is the way that I've been doing things, and I've been doing this for 3 years, but 95% of my success has come in the last year for selling coloring books on Amazon. And this is the way that I do things. So I do not rely on tools to tell me about the niche traffic. I do not rely on hot niche videos. I do all of my research on Amazon, and whatever niche you're in, not just coloring books, I highly recommend that you do every single second of your research on Amazon, because it's going to help you understand the specifics of the niche that you're getting into. So if you're getting into a certain niche that requires simplistic drawings or more complex drawings, you can go through the reviews on people's books and see what they like and see what they don't like, and then base your book around that. And this is insane, because people really don't even think about this when it comes to coloring books. Like, how thick should the lines be? How much white space should there be? How many pages should I have? And like I say, you can scroll down, check out the reviews. And for example, we could see there was a bad review because they've got boys coloring book on the front here and not boys and girls. And in this day and age, people are a little bit sensitive over these type of things. They prefer to see boys and girls coloring books. So when you create yours, you would consider things like that. And again, this is something that you wouldn't have necessarily thought about unless you were doing all of your research on Amazon. So here's the other thing with this here, and I just want to go back to the whole creating content here. So we spoke about the proportionate return, where it has to make sense to actually produce the content in whatever niche. So here's the thing that I always try and shoot for with my coloring books, is to have a unique selling point. Okay, so people go crazy with the whole unique selling point thing here, and for me it can be as simple as just making your book cover look better than the competition. So for example, I did a book that's in the color by number niche, and the only way that I could really think about having a unique selling point was to have like a kind of super saturated looking book cover, and that book sells like 100 to 200 copies a month, and it's in a really competitive niche. Now, if you're in competitive niches, it is my opinion that you have to do something different, because if you look back, not necessarily different, but we're talking about being different or better, or different and better where it makes sense to do so. So if you come back and you look at all those kind of fairy coloring books that we just look at, even though they're different, they all look the same, right? There's nothing new, there's nothing that's eye-catching. And if you're getting into these niches where loads of other people are publishing the same type of book, you really want to do something that makes you stand out. So here's the thing, like I did this case study for a book that just failed completely, and this is a real thing, like failure percentages, and this comes back to the proportionate return thing here, is that you have to accept that a decent amount of your books are going to fail, even if you have a rock solid approach to publishing, is that a certain amount of books are going to fail. So the thing here is that what I suggest that people do when it comes to creating their book covers, if they cannot think of any other way to have any kind of unique selling point, this is what I do. I spend a lot of time in Canva, and I work on all types of different colors, different text placement, different kind of saturation levels, and as you can see, different fonts and different types of drop shadows, different everything, until I get the book cover looking the way that I want it. So for me, whilst there is the element of having to produce more books, I think for coloring books in particular, I think to really stand out, you have to work on that book cover until it looks absolutely fantastic, or the absolute best that you can deliver in your niche. So here's a tip here that I use for pretty much every single coloring book that I have made, is that we take an interior page, and then we go ahead and we hire someone from Upwork.com to do the coloring for the front cover. So take the interior page, one that looks the best, hire someone to do like a kind of digital coloring of it, and then start using that for the base of your book cover. So let's do an example here when it comes to a unique selling point. So we have things like mandala coloring books, which people have known about for a very long time. There's going to be an absolute ton of these books being uploaded onto Amazon. If we just check the newest arrivals, we can see that there's going to be tons of mandala coloring books, and for the most part, these are all pretty bad or pretty average offerings, right? So this is one of the reasons that I don't ever worry about the saturation of Amazon, is because the competition is It's pretty mild in my opinion. But when it comes to breaking into these niches, what I would want to do is to find what my unique selling point is for when I get my book onto the first page. Okay, so launching your book, typically you're going to get onto the first page if you are using keywords correctly. You'll get onto the first page and then you have to stay there. There has to be something about your book. So you look back at all those fairy coloring books, you look at them and think, is there anything that's going to make them stick around? And the one that I identified that I thought was going to stick around was the one that had the most gorgeous book cover. So for example, we want to focus here on creating the best book cover in the niche. I'm not even joking. You think, you can screw around and make average looking book covers and make some sales. But for me, I started doing coloring books because I want to take over versus the competition and make a ton of sales. So gorgeous book cover would be the main thing that you want to focus on. Then, for example, what some people are doing, as you can see, I think I've possibly lost it here, but people are doing like 150, some people are doing 300, and that's their way of standing out. So we don't have a particularly good book cover here, but their way of standing out was to create more of these type of pages. Okay, so that's selling quite well. So again, that is a unique selling point that you want to consider. So here's the thing that annoys me sometimes about advice that's being given on YouTube is you'll find things like people doing examples of the Coco Wyo books, and to give a specific example, this one here. So I've seen people talking about this book, which is literally making a stupendous amount of money for Coco Wyo, which is great. But people have like done reviews of this book and like, oh, it's just such a simple book cover. I would disagree. Like, this is something that people think is a simple book cover, but what's really gone into it is something very specific, something that has great color contrast, something that has a great composition, something that has like a hand-drawn illustration that's been colored and has obviously the branding of Coco Wyo on it as well. So for me, this is not a simple coloring book cover. It is a very effective book cover. So again, like I say, this is what happens. People take this advice and they think, oh, I can create simple book covers and have success. And yes, you can in some niches, but specific to coloring books, like this is simple, but it's not effective in my opinion. Like this doesn't, to me, look particularly good at all. Okay, so there's always that you have to consider, which is why when I'm creating the covers for my coloring books, I take a lot, as you can see, like there's a lot of images here, 32 at least. And this is just one document. There's like 2 others with like 4 million more in there. So I take a lot of time to make sure that when I get onto that first page, people notice and people click. So your click-through rate, all those things that, that actually tells Amazon that you're going to stick around on the marketplace for a long time. This is what is causing that. Okay, so if you have a bad book cover, people aren't going to click it. Amazon's going to say the book isn't relevant. Then they're going to say goodbye. Okay, so super important for coloring books. Now, let's go ahead and move on and talk about the dreaded advertising problems that people have. So typically, people are going to run advertising campaigns with no thought, no goal, no budget, nothing. They're just going to go ahead and run ads because someone on the internet told them to do so. So ads are honestly something that are completely crazy and temperamental sometimes, but working with a framework that keeps you consistent, that keeps the book's longevity in the marketplace is super important. So when we're doing, we'll do these when we open up the Discord group for the KDP Raydog thing here. We will be doing that, and we're talking more specifically about that. Again, make sure that you join this, because it is going to be insane, and we will be talking about the specific advertising strategies to keep you running ads for a long time without losing a shitload of money. It's super important. But I'll go over this here and use a couple of my campaigns as examples. So I think the best way to kind of showcase this is just by going to my account for last month as an example. So my goal with advertising is to get, as you can see, the lowest cost per click that I can possibly get. So the way that I keep things running, the way that I get my books above the competition is by being able to run ads at a low cost per click. So here's the thing with advertising is that there are many ways that you can do this, and that's the reason why there are so many different types of campaigns online and so many different types of strategies. The strategy that I go for is typically just running automatic campaigns and then getting the cost per click down as possible, which allows me to run it for a prolonged period, right? So when you're running an advertising campaign for a prolonged period, a low cost per click, it means you're going to get this low ACoS as well, which means you're going to be running sales alongside your book, which means that you're going to have to boost it above the competition in these kind of competitive niches, right? So I won't go into too much detail, but the point here is that my plan is during like the first 30 days of the book going live is that I use the advertising campaigns to launch the book. to get some rankings, to get some early visibility, and then I start reducing the cost per click until I get down as low as I can go. If I don't get my cost per click down that low and it sits around like 50 cents, I do not let the book go for on and on and on and on. Like some people complain about spending too much money on ads. If that's the reason that you get upset or you quit or you lose money, then don't do it. Basically, like there's not going to be any way specifically where you can get a low cost per click, but I fish out the campaigns that give me the low cost per click and then I let them go. And I tend to ignore most of the other metrics like the spend, the click-through rate, the clicks, the orders or whatever, as long as the cost per click is low. And then in terms of like just business longevity in general, what a lot of people do is that they'll keep running the advertising campaigns at a high cost for a very, very long period. And for me, this is a recipe for disaster, because I've seen people do it who they have like 4 or 5 books, they spend thousands of dollars each month on each book, which is crazy, and then lose tons of money and then wonder why they're not making any money. So this comes down to the failure percentages with Amazon KDP. You can't keep making each book your like massive project where you're going to spend like thousands of dollars on advertising campaigns. What you do ultimately for me is to test the books into the marketplace, give them a kind of a budget. Your budget can be whatever you want it to be that you're comfortable with, and then if it doesn't meet the metrics you want it to meet during that budget, you move on to the next project. And I don't care what anyone says, this is still a numbers game, right? You still have to have a decent amount of books. And if you're pumping a ton of money into each book, you're probably going to lose money very, very quickly, and you're probably going to get upset. You're going to quit, complain in Facebook groups, and be one of those people. So that's why it's super important. You have this budget, you have the goal around your specific situation, okay? And so here's the thing. This is the typical process here, is that I run the ads with the goal and the budget in mind. We'll start losing money on the advertising campaigns. It's a given. Like, it's very rare to start making tons of sales organically or make profit through your advertising campaign straight away. You're going to lose money. You're going to accept that. And like I say, we start monitoring everything until it is profitable. Okay. So if it doesn't look like, if there's no metric in our favor, whether it's the click-through rate, the cost per click, the organic sales, the advertising sales, or whatever it is, if there's no metrics working in our favor, then we can't leave those campaigns going. We can't leave the book project going forever. But if they are working in our favor and we can reduce it to that point, then we just keep monitoring until the book is profitable. And then we leave that book into the marketplace and not worry about it too much. And then we repeat, which again, super important. Once you've moved on, once you've done the book, don't make it your everything in life. Get it out there, have a budget, run your ads, see where it's being ranked, do all those things, and then move on to the next project. It's super important. If you're serious about making good money with any book, coloring books in particular, you have to produce more books. And here's the thing that people do, is that they'll come over to Amazon, they'll see like some really average looking book with a really like crazy low BSR. They'll look at that and they'll go, oh, well, why can't I do this? Like there's some secret behind this, or they got some secret advertising campaign or whatever it is. You don't know what's going on really, and you don't dictate what the customers respond to. And this is the thing, like people think that their books are beautiful. Their friends and family think that their books are beautiful. But the reality is what matters is what the Amazon customer thinks. So you might think a book is shitty and then think, well, why is that selling? This must be a joke. It must be a scam or whatever it is. But the reality is that Amazon's customers are just responding to it well, better than yours. And this is why you have to test each book into the marketplace before moving on to the next one. And again, we can only talk about your average publisher here, but of course, you always have to accept the failure percentages. So as you progress, obviously you want that failure percentage to go down. So for me on coloring books, it's probably around 1 in 3 books are failing now. If I'm going from niche to niche and testing new niches, it's probably going to be around 1 in 8, 1 in 9, 1 in 10, around those points. So once you understand failure percentages with this, you're then going to get back to this section here where you're going to be able to run ads with a goal and have a budget in mind. Okay, so thinking about these two things paired together in particular is going to help you maintain longevity with your business. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. Hopefully that gives you some ideas when it comes to having more success with coloring books. And again, if you're interested in the service that's currently being offered or will be offered, make sure that you head over to chrisraydog.com, sign up or join the waiting list. We've got some exciting things coming there. Anyway, that's it for this video. I'll see you guys soon.